Hi, everyone. My name is Helen Adioson, the CEO of Care Academy. We're just going to give everyone a little bit more time to come on, but I want to let you know that you're in the right place. You are on the Home Care Owner panel for recruiting. We're really excited to have Greg Sanchez on today. I'll give people maybe about a minute or two to get settled in and get logged in, and then we'll get started. Hi, everyone. Okay, so we've gotten our 2 minutes down. I'm really excited. We've got great attendance and people are just trickling in and coming in. Actually, not even trickling, it's by it's by the dozens this time. So we're really excited to have you all on. Thank you so much for making the time this afternoon. As I mentioned, my name is Helen Adioson. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Care Academy. We are providing the standard of excellent care, and you are now tuned in to the Home Care Owner panel on recruiting. So caregiving recruiting strategies to help you build your care team and grow your business. We hope that you are going to implement a lot of the strategies. In fact, I'm going to make you promise me that you are going to implement some of the strategies that we have today. So on behalf of our team here at Care Academy and the Home Care Association of America, I'd love to welcome you. I'd love to welcome you to today's webinar. So just a quick reminder, and I want to thank Phil, the president over at HCOA. Before we get started, I want to make sure everyone knows about HCOA's annual leadership conference. This year, the conference is in Washington, D.C., one of my favorite cities, and it's September 23rd through the 25th. So HCOA is going to have industry leaders, experts speaking about innovation, business strategy, and best practices. It's going to be a great time. We're going to be there, and we'd love to see you. And there you can meet other home care owners. It's a great way to get best practices from some of the best in the field. And I'll be there with my team. We can meet you in person, and you can learn more and register on HCOA's website at www.hcoa.org. So really excited about that. So confidence is the key to unlocking everyone's potential and to have the greatest impact and achieve more. That's going to be true for you as business owners. That's going to be true for any managers. And of course, that's especially true for caregivers who are on the front lines every day working one-on-one with clients. Confident caregivers are much more likely to be able to handle the stress and the unpredictability that comes with this job. I know this firsthand, and I'll talk to you guys a little bit later about my own experience. But what we're hoping is that after today's discussion on caregiver recruiting, I'm going to be demonstrating why Care Academy is an absolute must have for anyone who's investing in caregiver recruiting or who wants to take their home care business to the next level. Because what good does it do to spend all this time and effort finding, interviewing, and hiring caregivers if you don't train them with the right skills and education they need to do their job correctly and with confidence. So I think about this all the time. You know, it's the energy and the money that you're putting into caregiver recruiting. Doesn't it make sense to do everything in your power to ensure that caregivers are successful after they accept the job offer? So let's go ahead and talk about this study that we're all familiar with. If you guys don't know about Home Care Pulse, they are, you know, the standard of measuring both client satisfaction, caregiver satisfaction across the board. They do a phenomenal job. We're friends of those folks, including Aaron, who's the CEO. And at Care Academy, we want to help you get your caregiver turnover rate down. We know that's what matters at the end of the day. It's recruiting, your onboarding, and retention. So I realize it's a really, really big and bold promise around getting turnover rate down, given the fact that every year Home Care Pulse comes out with a statistic that says the average turnover rate right now is 66% in our industry, and it's getting worse every year. But what sets Care Academy apart from any other training company is that we're taking all the employee training best practices that are being talked about at universities and adult learning and in large companies, and we're creating online classes for caregivers that include all of the best practices. So these classes and our classes are centered around your client's needs. We've got your state's caregiver training requirements, and the learning that your caregivers simply want to have access to, right? Caregivers also want training. So I've got a question. Do you think it's possible to get your turnover rate down to 10%? So we're going to do our first poll. We're going to do one of many polls. We like to keep things engaging. So you will, you'll find on the chat box. So we're going to do a little bit of a chat messaging piece right now. I want you to message to me. Is it possible to get your caregiver turnover rate down to 10%? Yes, no, be candid. We're all friends here, and I'd love to get some of your responses. And I'm talking about the annual caregiver turnover rate. So what that means is that if you hire 10 people after a year, 9 are still working for you. So I'm seeing a handful of yeses and a lot of no's. It's a handful of yeses and a lot of no's. Okay, thank you so much for being candid. I really appreciate that. So while I think you'll be surprised that, we believe that that is possible and we've seen that borne out. So I want to introduce you to Andrea Cohen. She is an HCOA board member and CEO and co-founder of Houseworks in Newton, Massachusetts. She's actually one of our customers, which is about 10 miles west of Boston. So that's where she's located. So before Care Academy, her caregiver turnover rate was around 38%, which is better than average, but still a little high. With Care Academy, her team was able to get that down to 10%. So imagine how much easier your job as an owner or a manager would be if the number of people you need to recruit and train every month was reduced by a factor of around 3 or 5. So instead of having to find and train, maybe about 10 people every month, it's 3 or 4, right? Instead of 20, it's 7 or 8. And that obviously builds on at scale based on the number of caregivers and how big your agency is. And on top of that, you don't have to teach the classes or set up the room every week, essentially freeing up your time as an administrator or an owner to go do more recruiting. And we'll talk about that obviously in today's session. Andrea is not the only customer who's achieved this. So the other day, we, asked our developers and our big data people to put on their, hats and run an analysis. And we've shown that a lot of agencies are experiencing some level of reduction in turnover across our agencies. So that's something that we're really excited about. So I want to talk to you a little bit about Care Academy and who we are. I didn't introduce ourselves fully in terms of the top of the webinar, but I'd love to do so now. What is Care Academy about and how did we get here? So how did we become a preferred training partner of HCOA, who's our co-sponsor today? And why is Care Academy the standard when it comes to caregiver training? What is it that we're doing that's delivering superior results for home care owners across the nation and cutting turnover rates down from the industry average of 64% all the way down to 10%. And what is it that caregivers love about our courses, and why are we seeing a 92% completion rate? So I can talk a little bit about all of those. So Care Academy was started in 2013 by me, the CEO, Helen Adioson, and our Chief Medical Officer, Madhuri Reddy. So back when I was finishing up my master's degree at Harvard Graduate School of Education, I met Dr. Madhuri Reddy, who is a geriatrician, and she's also an assistant professor at Harvard Medical School. So the interesting part of my backstory, as I mentioned a little bit and alluded to, is that I have been a caregiver since I was in high school. I was trained as a home health aide. I grew up just basically from the age of around 18 and up as a caregiver myself. And what happened to me, and I think a lot of younger unprepared caregivers feel like this, is I often felt unprepared when starting with a new client. Of course, I'd gotten my basics in my home health training program, but I needed mentorship, I needed coaching, and I needed more training. And the more I thought about it, I realized that a lot of just the basics, right, the very basic standard training that we pull off the shelf for our state's requirements and that kind of compliance training was just not enough to really kind of get a handle on all of the nuances of senior care, right? Whether we're talking about some of the hard skills, transfers, bathing, and also how to talk with clients, right? The professionals, professional stuff, right? Like how to get dressed and present as a professional. And I think a lot of the folks out here, maybe the audience may be nodding their head, because that's a lot of what you're probably seeing in some of your caregivers. So I started asking other caregivers for tips and techniques. What I was surprised by, whether they were veteran caregivers or not, is everyone had an opinion on how I should be doing things as a caregiver, but there was so much variation. There were no best practices. So I didn't know if I could trust that. So fortunately, I come from a family of nurses. I had family members who were pursuing nursing degrees and folks who were just really knowledgeable. And so was able to get that information on my own. And I obviously have an education degree from Harvard as well, but I realized that so many home care agencies and really caregivers aren't able to dispense the latest and greatest in terms of best practices for education and training. And so that's something that we found out, and is the starting point and the foundation of what we are doing here at Care Academy. So we wrote up this business plan. We created Care Academy. We really launched around 2013. Since then, we've won multiple awards. In 2015, Google, as well as Aging 2.0, awarded us. We won those competitions, the AARP's 2016 Aging in Place Award, and in 2017 we're accepted into TechStars, which is a great business acceleration program that helps folks make a positive impact in the world. And we're excited to announce that about a week ago we were awarded a finalist position in MIT's Inclusive Innovation Challenge. It's a global competition that is helping folks who are serving or companies rather who are serving low-income workers. So really excited about that. And then let me talk to you a little bit about what we've been able to achieve and who we are and why we love this industry so much and what we've been able to accomplish. So we've educated 20,000 caregivers, and we're doing that per year. We are seeing an average of 3,600 classes are completed online every month, and Care Academy is setting the standard when it comes to caregiver education. 92% of the classes that are signed get completed. We're excited about that. And our classes are 100% mobile friendly. Caregivers can take the classes on their iPhone and iPad, their Android phone or Chromebook, their computer, their laptop. So they don't have to come to your office, and they're not having to download or install anything to make it work, right? And now we're up to 42 hours of training content and hundreds of videos that are available for you and your caregivers. And in addition to the logos that you see on the screen, I want to welcome, and I'm very proud to do so, Always Best Care, Comfort Keepers, Homewell Senior Care, Home Helpers, Synergy Home Care, Touching Hearts at Home, and some of the Visiting Angels. We've had franchise owners from all of the above join the Care Academy family in the last 90 days. And so if you're a member of one of those networks, give us a call. We'd love to let you know who's using Care Academy so you can contact your peers. We know relationships matter in this industry, so we want them to share the good news about what Care Academy is doing. So without further ado, Greg, are you there?
I'm here.
Hi, Greg. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us on today's webinar. So I'm going to preface with, before I give a short synopsis of, the great guy that Greg Sanchez is, I'm just going to tell our audience, right, this is not for you to, be passive. We want you to be active. We want you to engage. Today's webinar is designed to be interactive. So there are going to be polls as we're taking the questions live. So we want you to interact, and this is going to be fun. And the more you interact, the more you're going to get out of our time together. I also want you to promise me that after today's webinar, you're going to take action today and use what you learned from Greg and some of the other agencies that contributed to some of our learnings today. So at the end of the webinar, I'll ask you what is your biggest learning and what you're going to do to implement that learning in your business. So I'm going to read a quick bio of Greg. Greg has always had a special place in his heart for the senior community. Coming from a large Hispanic family, he grew up surrounded by his grandparents, great aunts, and great uncles. And for a period of time as a young adult, he lived with his maternal grandparents, acting as their caregiver while continuing his education. The time he spent with them and their friends provided him with insight and an appreciation for the needs of the senior community. It was only natural when an opportunity presented itself to purchase a Home Instead Senior Care franchise, he jumped at it. So Greg is the director of Home Instead Senior Care Pasadena, responsible for overseeing the day-to-day operations as well as striving to meet long-term strategy of becoming platinum home care provider in the San Gabriel Valley. Without further ado, Greg, do you want to add on to that? I know I only spoke to just a little bit of how awesome you are, but do you want to add on to that at all?
No, actually, you did a great job there for the introduction. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, no, thank you. So before we ask Greg some questions, I told you it's going to be interactive, so you're going to have to be on your feet, right? We're going to start with a poll because in order to make the best use of our time, we want to know how many caregivers you need to hire every month. So we're going to put up the poll. So if you just look below, answer this question. How many caregivers do you need to hire every month? Is it 1 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 plus? We're going to launch the poll now. And I've got team members who are going to be taking, care of the chats and relaying your questions. So also don't hold anything back. Answer that poll. So think about just your current situation and pick the range that works for you or it's most appropriate. You don't have to be accurate. So I'm going to give everyone about 30 more seconds. It's a little longer. Okay, so we have, thank you so much, everyone. So we're going to, there we go. We're going to close the poll in a second. So 15% have to hire 1 to 4, 33% have to hire 5 to 9, 37% 10 plus. Wow. 12% have to hire 25, and 3% have to hire 50 plus or more. So thank you so much for providing that. So let's go ahead and close the poll. And what I want to do now is transition into asking Greg a set of questions around, how he's recruiting, where he's recruiting from, and some of his best practices. So, I hope that you all definitely ask questions. We'll get questions at the end for Greg. And so, Greg, let me ask you this question. What percentage of your new hires are coming from advertising jobs on the internet, right? I think that's usually the go-to source for everyone who's probably on the webinar, the Indeeds of the world. But what percentage of your new hires are coming from advertising your jobs on the internet?
Oh God, Helen, at least over 85% of all of our caregivers that we're hiring recently have been coming through the various internet platforms. We do have external relationships with various educational institutions within our territory, but yeah, the majority come from the internet.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's great. And so your second poll, so get ready to do this poll again, right? So if you didn't do the first one, let's make sure you get ready to do the second one. What percentage of your new hires for your agency are through online job ads? All right, we're getting them in. Excellent. 10 more seconds. All right, so let's go ahead and close it up. So it looks like based on the responses, 9% are, getting about 10%, 6% are getting 30%, 14% are getting 50%, 28 or 70%, and the majority of our audience, 90% of them are coming through the internet or job ads. And so Greg, that lends itself to the question, what job sites are working best for you right now?
Well, right now we have two of the major platforms, Indeed and Applicant Stack. Very rarely the Craigslist, but it's usually those two that we see the best results from.
Okay, so and that then I think the question that's on my mind is, are there any differences in terms of quality and quantity of applicants by online job source? We hear, and you just mentioned Craigslist. We know that can be maybe a high volume place, but is there any correlation in the time that you've been doing this you notice in terms of the quality and the quantity really of the sites that you're using?
You know what? It really depends on what parameters you put around the process of applicants applying online. I think that if you were to go ahead, like put it this way, at this point in time, we get a lot of our candidates from Indeed, but the quality of those individuals are not all that, and I think the challenge becomes. But with Applicant Stack, we've gone ahead and we don't have as many, but we get more quality candidates, and it has more to do with the number of pre-qualifying questions. We have more pre-qualifying questions and require more diligence in the application process through app versus Indeed, where they're using their Indeed profile to just auto-populate. So yeah, you're getting a are clicking on, oh yeah, home care, do that. And then when you actually call them, they're like, I thought I applied for a hamburger job. So, it's, yeah, so having those pre-screening processes in place really help kind of funnel in more qualified candidates.
So what, in terms of your qualified candidates, I'm sure this has been trial and error. What are the types of questions that you're asking in terms of, pre-qualification? If you're an agency owner on this call and you're just getting started with this process, or you're looking and you've had the folks who are like, oh, I'm applying to Burger King, I didn't know that this was, to your home care agency. How are you pre-qualifying? What are the questions you're asking?
Questions that we're asking are more along the lines of skills, experience within the home care field, techniques, asking questions specifically about, are you comfortable transferring? Are you comfortable performing incontinence care? Questions that terminology that someone in the field that's been a home health aide or even a CNA would understand the terminology, whereas a layman who would not, but in the difference between a diaper and an incontinence product, which is pretty much the same thing, just by utilizing terminology that we are accustomed to in our industry, really kind of helps weed out some of these individuals.
That's great. And let me ask you this, of the folks that you're sort of weeding out in that process, is there any way for folks who may not necessarily have the background in as a CNA or home health aide, is there room for you to, either consider them or ask sort of more sort of character or service oriented questions? Are you doing anything like that right now?
Absolutely. So I think the key thing for us is that a lot of these platforms don't you don't lose sight of those individuals. So basically, if they meet the qualifications of your questions, then you go ahead and you can move forward with looking at them. But at the same time, there's still a whole group of individuals that are in the background that have been rejected that you still have their contact.
Mm.
That does take a little bit of diligence to go through and evaluate them. But, there's always diamonds in the rough. And I mean, just because
Mm.
individual, cared for their grandmother for 5 years shouldn't disqualify them because they don't have home actual working for an agency or as a private. I think the key thing
Mm.
for us, though, as individuals evaluating candidates is the difference between what does caring for your grandmother mean? Did caring for your
Mm.
grandmother mean going ahead and providing meals for her and assisting with dressing, or was it visiting? I went to visit with my grandmother. So
Mm.
trying to obtain that information is really important, and sometimes you can screen for it, but sometimes it does require a phone call in order to glean that information.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. So, there are only so many caregivers out there, and that actually leads to, my next, point. So job ads need to work. So, in terms of setting yourself apart from the competition, Greg, I think you've been remarkable in this, and you even say it in your, even in the bio, right? Is that you're building towards being the provider of choice in the San Gabriel Valley, because I think we're starting to realize that there are only so many experienced caregivers out there, right, who are coming in as professional caregivers, already ripened off the vine. But as you mentioned, there are diamonds in the rough, folks who may need a job out there at any given moment and who have different types of experience. So how have you found, because there's only so many caregivers out there, what are ways in which you're swaying applicants away from competitors? What are you doing to entice some of those folks who, whether they're experienced or not, they choose to work with Home Instead Pasadena? How are you doing that?
So basically, it goes down to the competitive compensation package. It goes
Mhm.
to, wages, benefits, 401k, healthcare, those kinds of things, but also really leveraging training. Because if I look to our peers in the skilled nursing facilities and the home health and the independent living and assisted living facilities, a lot of these organizations require to have training, but they put the onus of the training on the employee as well as
Mhm.
on the cost. So what
Mhm.
we've been is leveraging the fact that not only are we proud supporters of Care Academy and utilizing your platform, but we also provide in-house training as well. Because it
Mhm.
goes back to the original point at the beginning of your talk here that it really confidence is what's going to drive individuals to want to work for your organization. If they don't have those as many awkward moments, we always have awkward moments in our business. But if they don't have as many awkward moments or they understand how to navigate those awkward moments, then you're really not only utilizing that from a recruitment standpoint, but also for retention.
Oh, that's excellent, and thank you so much for that vouching for us. Just even to reiterate that we've definitely heard that from a lot of the agencies out there. Some of them who are our customers, some who aren't. That advertising sort of guaranteed hours in your job posts, even if it's not full time, can definitely increase the number of applicants. We know that owners are doing all kinds of, as you mentioned, Greg, hiring bonus offers. The $500 after 500 hours worked, and we've even even heard that, basically scheduling some level of benefits, and all of this, folks, is in the Home Care Pulse survey, and in some of the blogs that we've done as well, that kick in at a certain time. So if you're doing that schedule of benefits at a certain time automatically, like PTO starting at 90 days, or AFLAC insurance coming in at 6 months, or even guaranteed raises, that may help as well. So, I'm really excited to hear that some of the things that you're doing alongside training that is employer driven as opposed to caregiver driven has made a huge difference. So what is your process? So let's even talk, we just started at the top of the funnel. And when we imagine recruiting and recruiting efforts, and I know that because I know Greg really well, I know he comes from a sales background, right? So you'll probably be familiar with what I'm talking about here, but you're starting top of funnel, you're talking about filling in your applicant pool. But in terms of converting those folks and now actually getting them into your office and getting them out to clients, what are some ways in which you're converting applicants or inquiries, from these job sites, from these different corners of the recruiting universe into in-person interviews? How are you getting them through the door, Greg? What's working for you?
So right now, our basic practice is to go ahead and once we've identified a candidate worth pursuing, we'll go ahead and reach out to them with a phone screen. I'm fortunate that I do have an HR manager as well as a full-time recruiter to assist in these activities. I think the more touch points that you can have with this individual following up, whether it be via text, whether it be via email or phone call, is really important. We then go from a screening process. It's basically following our script that we have of various phone questions and kind of really illustrating why the home instead experience in Pasadena is where they want to be, why we are the employer of choice in the Pasadena area. We really emphasize those things to kind of get them excited and wanting to come in, and then we usually go ahead and then after that we'll schedule them for an in-person interview depending on how they did how they scored on their overall responses to the questions. But to touch a little bit more on that, it's all about your organization's reputation, and really that you are, I mean, basically, it's almost like marketing. It is with marketing, basically. You're trying to create a campaign here, and you can only market so well depending upon the reputation that your organization has. In this environment where everything is social media related and Yelp reviews and all that stuff, it's critical that you address any kind of negative publicity, if you will, that you get on social media, and make sure that all your practices are up to par, and that even when individuals do leave, that you're leaving on good terms. And it's all about that reputation, because this industry is small, and these people and folks. So oh yeah, I can't. Oh, are you kidding? I'd never worked there. But and that alone kill your chances. So I think what we've done is, just as much as we market for clients, we're also marketing for our caregivers, and we really focus on the reputation, on our various types of surveys that we identify, and we're really trying to rectify any challenges that come up as quickly as possible, so that no one can say that at Home Instead Pasadena they felt that they weren't being heard. And I think that was kind of.
That is excellent. Let me even just to follow up on that, we are familiar with the Yelps of the universe, but tell me more about the maybe online or social media presence, or maybe some of the organic ways in which you're building up a reputation for excellence to attract caregivers. We talk a lot about attracting clients, but what does that look like for doing that with caregivers?
So what we've done here in Pasadena is pictures say 1,000 words, videos even tell more. So we've actually really ahead and invested in actually having a media company come out, provide us with some video footage, and really created a wonderful video about our training program and why our caregivers love working here. I mean, and then putting that out on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and just really kind of consistently, and it can't just be once in a blue moon. It needs to be a weekly event that you're going ahead and you're posting something positive about the employee experience. Same thing goes with Yelp. I mean, encourage
Mhm.
your employees to go ahead and, well, the employees that you know are going to give you a 5-star review, just like you do with your clients. Encourage
Mm.
and provide that 5-star review. People are utilizing these the Yelps, the Facebooks to really kind of gauge whether they take the pulse of your organization, and they really want to, at least savvy employees are going to do those kinds of things so that they can say, oh, you know what, this is an organization that I want to work for. I think I could make a difference in their organization. So definitely utilizing those platforms for not just marketing to your clients, but marketing to your caregivers is important, and to sustain reputation.
Ah, see, and I love those, even those key points is reputation management, right? It's the like being known with the caregivers who are working with you, but it's also maintaining and making sure that you're upholding and thinking about really out of the box solutions for having a great presence. So for those of you in the audience who are just starting, or even if you're a veteran agency, I think those are some really great pointers in terms of building up your reputation. So let's talk a little bit because this is the recruitment heavy piece, and you're just hitting all the marks, Greg. I really appreciate that, because I think one thing kind of leads to another in our conversation. So in terms of the caregiver shortage, there can only be so much done with the caregivers that we currently have in the market. We have to bring new people in, and we've talked about where to go and how to stand out and how to maximize the results you're getting off of your online job posts. And you even brought up reputation management. So let's talk about bringing in new people. And this is something that I know that everyone may be trying out right now or thinking about, because there is a caregiver shortage. I don't have to tell everyone in the audience that. So as your agency grows and as the caregiver shortage gets worse, you're eventually going to get to need to get to good at really bringing people into the industry and into your agency. So let me ask you this, Greg. What percentage of your new hires were previously not doing care professional, or any of the folks that you considered? You mentioned folks who are doing family caregiving. Is that by and large the folks that you're getting in through the door who've not done professional caregiving?
No, I would say it's a smaller percentage.
Mhm.
Probably about 30% of our population were former family caregivers who've decided to go ahead and pursue this as, something for, you know, for employment. We So yeah, I would say 30%.
Okay, 30%. Okay, great. So I would actually love for folks, because we've been talking about these different strategies. I have one last poll for you to take. I just want to know, for every 10 hires, how many of your current caregivers, or or applicants, weren't working as a paid caregiver in their previous job? Is it one or two, three or four? This is on a monthly basis, one or two, three or four, five or six. We'll leave this poll open, and I'm really excited to see what folks say here. So maybe they're working in retail, or maybe they're wanting to get into healthcare, and they realize that they can start maybe in home care and work their way up. We talk a little bit about that, but we want to know, what does that look like for you as an agency? Yeah. All right. So now I'm going to give everyone about 10 more seconds, and we're going to take a look at the audience response to this poll. Mhm. All right. So it looks like, based on our poll results, maybe one or two are coming from previous industries. And this actually leads to a really good question that I think has come up a lot, and something that we are starting to talk a lot about because I think it's going to make a difference in the industry. But I'm curious, what, Greg, is your experience in training new or inexperienced, first-time caregivers? That's what I was at 18. But I would love to hear about what some of the things that you all are doing and thinking about in order to address that.
Okay. Yeah, so for new caregivers, so again, they go through their initial orientation. We've actually started a mentoring program with our lead caregivers. So we actually have 3 levels of caregiver. Our lead caregivers, as part of their role, are acting as mentors. And I think over the first 90 days to really go ahead and have a point person, not just in the office who does the scheduling or something or quality assurance, but someone who actually does the work day to day and can go ahead and provide, you know, the helpful hints that a new person to the industry might need. So that is one aspect of how we're supporting these individuals who were non-caregivers. And secondly, we're emphasizing the importance of training. We're offering them in-house and online training as much as they need for their first few months, just so that way they understand that the resources are there. And then we're also doing touch points with our leadership. So some of our managers in the office are going ahead and reaching out and just following up. How did that first shift go? How did that second shift go? Making sure that if that individual needs an introduction, that they
Mm.
are off introduction, because I think that kind of helps break the ice. I mean, you don't get into this business. Compassion is the key aspect of this business, but being able to be sociable and be able to engage, and I think especially with the younger generations, being able to communicate, being able to connect is a challenge. And basically, we're teaching
Mm.
skills and all over again. It's like, how do you
Mhm.
get away from your mobile device to actually talking to someone who really doesn't know how to use a mobile device?
Wow.
So teaching soft skills and really emphasizing these things and follow up, follow up, follow up. Yes, it
Mhm.
takes a lot. You've already invested over $1,000 in just from the onboarding process. I mean, I think I've calculated maybe about $1,500 if you think about each individual, from the amount of money you're spending on Indeed to the amount of money you're paying your HR manager or your recruiter or your trainer, and that percentage of their FTE wage going towards the overall onboarding of it one individual. It costs about $1,500. So you want to do
Wow.
as much as you can to go ahead and ensure that that caregiver that you are giving a chance to is successful. I like to
Mm.
believe that we do a good job on creating, removing boundaries and really focusing on giving people tools that they need to be successful.
Mm, that is excellent. I really appreciate that. I'm doing this sort of, my team is looking at me because I like to be a little bit like extemp here. Just on, even on that note, I just love, a couple of you, or a couple of you, everyone, to just note, what are you doing right now? And we'll share out some of those best practices at the very end. What are you doing right now to mentor or coach? What are your best practices for keeping and bringing on folks who may not ever have provided professional care? If you're doing something like that now, tell us some of those, your best practices. We'll share some of those in the wrap-up email. And if you're thinking about doing something like this, what are some of those the ways that you are currently supporting and bringing on those new caregivers, and making sure they have the mentorship or support that they need from you? So that actually leads me to another point. So you're getting, and you're even, breaking down the costs for us of what it means to get a caregiver or a potential caregiver who's really interested in terms of being a first-time caregiver and a professional. So for you, Greg, where are you looking? So you mentioned, like, maybe a great percentage of your caregivers are coming from online resources. Where else are your caregivers coming from to round out, your recruiting numbers? Is that from referral programs or, community events? Where are you going outside of what's, quote, sort of the standard, to find other caregivers?
Okay. So from a referral perspective, I'm seeing maybe about 2 to 5% of the caregivers that we're onboarding actually coming through from our referral programs. If you're doing a referral program, reevaluate it just in case. Sometimes giving a little bit up front and a lot more at the end versus waiting to the end kind of helps incentivize. What we're doing is we're working with various organizations like maybe workforce development boards. There's a couple in our area that we work with. But what we really focus on, and one of the things that I really, as a former educator, is basically going back and really touching to what you said, Helen, on utilizing home care or caregiving as a way to understand what the expectations of the healthcare industry are going to be like. And but by that I mean manner, and understanding how to communicate with one of our fastest growing patient populations in this country right now. I think that we have a program called Kickstart Your Healthcare Career Through Caregiving. We really go ahead and go out and promote to the junior colleges, to the local trade schools. We really get in there with the MAs, with the CNA programs before they've even gotten in, before they've completed them. Local adult schools have been a big draw for us. Getting in there and meeting with these individuals, and not just doing it from a quick drop-by marketing, but go in, the educators, talk to the instructors, ask them what their needs are, and then from there, going ahead and popping in once in a while, maybe bringing a little cake to their graduation celebration that they have at the end of these. Really making yourself present, and not just as an employer, but as a resource, as a subject matter expert that these individuals could reach out to, not just the students, but also the educators. Right now, we're trying to work on grants with various educational groups to go ahead and support home care aid training programs that we could potentially funnel into our employee pipeline. So think outside the box, focus on education. And again, if we're trying to go ahead and get good healthcare providers out there, teach them how to talk to people. And that's where home care comes into play.
That's excellent. Oh my gosh, Greg, this is amazing. I really love the fact that you mentioned building relationships with folks. I love that, like bringing a cake. How awesome would that be if the home care agency owner showed up with a cake at your graduation of, your program? I think that builds a lot of goodwill and trust, and it's so thoughtful of you. That's incredible. I really love that, and to that point, I love how you talk about using sort of community resources to kind of build upon themselves, right? Going into junior colleges, going into some of these programs, and utilizing, not utilizing, I think that's such a hard word, but building relationships so that you are then a home care agency of choice for folks to work at. So in terms of your current employees, though, if somebody brought a cake to my graduation, I'm already excited, right? Especially just the thought of cake. So, what are you doing to incent your current employees to, bring in other caregivers? Are you using something like an employee referral program?
Yes, we are. Basically, right now, we are doing an employee referral program where the caregiver provides us, or the candidate provides us with the name of who's referred them. We really encourage our caregivers because we believe that, especially good caregivers, good people tend to hang out with other good people. So we hope to go ahead and take advantage of that. And what we're doing is basically after the first 90 days, we'll if that candidate is hired and maintains employment over the first 90 days, then they'll get a $300 bonus. The caregiver, the referrer, will get a $300 bonus. We have been talking internally, though, that sometimes you need to prime the pump a little, so maybe putting a little bit more of that money up front once the candidate gets hired and makes it through orientation, then give the referrer a smaller portion, and then give them the bigger pot at the end of the 90-day.
That's great, and I love that fact that you guys are course correcting and making adjustments to, and I'm sure that some of the folks in the audience already maybe have some referral programs, but I think that it is a really great idea to have some of that up front, for folks to kind of get jump started in looking for folks in their community, and being sort of in the forefront of that. So I'm going to stop there, and I bet some of the folks out in the audience have some questions to kind of build upon or give context to some of the things that we've talked about today. So I'm going to open up our questions and get questions from our audience. We know there are a lot of you out there, just to get a sense of maybe some other things that we haven't mentioned or covered today that may work for you. I don't know if also I'm going to ask our team if we got any responses to some of the things that folks are doing in their agencies as well. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So some folks said that we introduce all of our, thank you so much, Ryan, for providing this. So Ryan says we introduce all of our caregivers to their clients ahead of time if possible, same start of service day if it's not pre-scheduled. This helps them feel more comfortable being with a new client. I love that. And that's something that's so simple. I bet that helps not only with recruiting for Ryan, but I bet that helps in retention too. So it's not a huge shock. I would have loved that as a caregiver. So Jessica, thank you, Jessica, says that we have a mentorship program with more senior caregivers that are our superstars. I love that. Having in-services that refreshes and trains all of our employees, and it helps to move up stellar caregivers into administration because it ensures that owners and caregivers can bridge gaps on expectations. That's amazing, Jessica. Thank you so much for sharing that. I bet Jessica might have maybe a board in their office that has, I'm such a teacher, so my background is also as a teacher too, so I talk a lot about, really cutesy or corny teacher things, but having stars on the wall and having sort of your highlight of, I love it, stellar caregivers. So Daphne says, so we train, we have the new hire shadow a caregiver on the client's team if there's an extensive care need, or we start them assisting with errand services like housekeeping, laundry, and then progress to more challenging tasks. That is great, or assignments rather. And Bruce is asking, tell us about your 3 tiers of caregivers. I really like that, and we should have focused on that more. Greg, can you talk about your 3 tiers and how you decide, who fits into what tier, and you assess if maybe people move up or down? What does that look like?
So we have you can classify it as caregiver 1, 2, and 3. So caregiver 1 is basically your entry-level caregiver, or someone who's probably got a little bit more than a year of experience, who's new to the organization, and after 6 months' time, we'll go ahead and evaluate that individual, identify we have performance reviews that we perform every 6 months. What we do is we look to what is the feedback we're getting from the client, what is the feedback we're getting from quality assurance, from scheduling. Also, we look to their training and seeing if they're taking an active role in educating themselves and bettering themselves. Once they do that, then they could potentially qualify for the level 2 position. The level 2 position does have aspects of caregiving to it. Maybe they're working with a little bit more of a challenging client. We actually put them through a secondary orientation. So because what we're having the caregiver 2 do is act as the mentor for the newer caregivers. They need to be knowledgeable about policy and procedure. They need to be knowledgeable about techniques. So we make sure that those individuals are trained effectively to be good mentors, and individuals that lack the ability to teach don't usually make it to that level. Level 3 is basically for a lead caregiver who's been in their function for a year or so. Is basically they're going in and they're doing the rapid response. They're doing the they're going in and fixing the problems, because basically we believe here at Home Instead that caregiving is not a dead end job. This industry is growing, and we need to have career paths for our employees, from caregivers all the way up. So by the time you're a level 3 caregiver, you're on your way to potentially a quality assurance associate or a scheduler or something like that, really being an integral part of the organization.
That is awesome. And thank you so much for talking about career pathing. I'm a huge fan of that, and we'll talk more about that. So let's get back into the questions. Thank you so much, Bruce, for asking your question. Brittany's asking, what percentage of your team actually arrives at the in-house training, right? So we talk about that top of funnel. How many of those folks are making it, if you have to talk about this as funneling?
I would say that, we have I would say that once they've gotten through the in-person interview, I would say we're probably about 85% that actually show up to the orientation. Usually it's from the time of the phone screen to the in-house interview. That's where we're probably about maybe 60% show up. And what we're trying to evaluate what we could do to go ahead and really increase that participation or that interest in making the effort to come in. But I see it as a blessing in some cases, because perhaps that individual just wasn't the type of person we were looking for, and we'll go from there. We're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We would definitely need to go ahead and evaluate what we could be doing better to increase that number.
That's great. It's both one, thinking about the quality of the caregiver and basically their ability to show up, because we sometimes we know, quite frankly, that might be a challenge for caregivers. Definitely a challenge within the industry that people have pointed out. And also, again, thinking about course correction. Have you this is an ad hoc question for me, Greg. What is that turnaround, or through the pipeline? How many days is that typically for your agency?
We're rather aggressive. I mean, this is a good thing about, again, having an FTE, 2 FTEs in an HR role focused on recruitment, is basically we can turn it around within a week.
Okay.
So then that week 1, they've been identified as a candidate through whatever mechanism. They are phone screened, they're brought in, and then they are processed. We can start pre-employment documentation, so that way the following week they're in orientation.
Fantastic. Okay, that works out. And this is our last question. I'm going to ask you now, Greg. There are a lot of great questions that are coming up, and they're bubbling up. Would it be possible for us to send you these, and maybe we can create like a short blog link at the end of our webinar today? There's some really great questions that I think a lot of people would benefit from, hearing from an expert in this. Would you mind if we did that?
Not a problem.
Oh, thank you so much, Greg. I appreciate it. And the last question we're going to ask today. So what do you find to be the most important topics to address during orientation? That comes from Connor.
Oh, the most important is basically safety. I think safety is paramount. Workers' compensation is not cheap in the state of California. We really need to. And our priority as an organization is the safety of our caregivers and our clients. I tell everyone during orientation, if you come to work feeling good and healthy, you should leave feeling good and healthy. So we really focus a lot of time and attention on safety. Of course, there is policy and procedure, underscoring, requirements for what it means to have your specific availability, changing availability, things like that. But it's a lot about safety. It's because again, we want to make sure that, our caregivers leave their shift feeling good just like they got there, and that our clients are safe. I mean, if you think about it, the majority of our clients are clients we have are there because there is a safety concern. So we want to make sure that safety is paramount in everything that our caregivers do.
Excellent. No, I really appreciate that. So, on that note, I know we're getting close here. Greg, I want to just a heartfelt thank you so much for being a part of our first set of three panels on recruiting, onboarding, and retention. On the recruiting part, I think you knocked it out of the park. I think you guys are excelling in what you all do, and I've been so excited and thrilled to share for you to share a lot of your best practices with our audience today. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Helen, and thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of people saying thank you so much. When is he going to be back? So we'll see if we can do that because I know Greg is really busy, but I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome, awesome. So let's go ahead and transition. So Greg mentioned a lot of really great best practices. And what I want to show you next is how we can use that, some of the best practices that Greg mentioned, and use those within training, right? He mentioned a lot about getting sort of new caregivers who are not as acclimated to training, and how we can use training and use supports to make sure those caregivers are coming through the funnel and they're being hired and supported by your agency. So for those who are not yet using Care Academy, I'm going to spend the next 15 to 20 minutes sharing how we're helping home care owners. And maybe it'll be a little shorter than that. So we do it in three ways: by providing techniques and tools that help owners and managers to recruit new caregivers into the industry. We create online classes that teach new caregivers the hard skills required to do the job, and by showing caregivers how to be successful in their job as a caregiver. This is where all that soft skills training, a lot of what Greg mentioned, really makes the difference in teaching caregivers how to diffuse difficult situations with some of your clients and some of their behaviors. So I'm going to just dive into maybe some of the ways that you're currently doing training. So in terms of quality training, versus some of the things that you may be doing now, there are a lot of ways people are currently doing training. Maybe this is the way you're currently doing it. You might be bringing everyone in and watching a DVD. You could email everyone a PDF and tell them to read it, or you could be sending out a bunch of links to YouTube channels. But there are all of these different ways in which we might be doing training right now and attracting caregivers and trying to get them through the funnel and get them out to clients. But just like everything else, given 10 ways of doing something, there's usually 2 or 3 better ways to do them. So this webinar is about best practices. So let's just get into it. So to us, the question of caregiver training isn't so much about meeting state requirements. It's a lot of what has to be covered to meet the needs of your clients and to make sure you have the most professional caregivers. How do we make it so that caregivers know what to expect and how to handle it? And the answer to this question is not very well understood. And the difference is just at the heart of it: quality education and providing quality education. So basic education will teach you how to do something, how to operate a machine or how to do a bed bath, and that's all really important. But quality education goes way above and beyond that. It's about making sure caregivers understand. For instance, basic training or your state compliance training may make sure that there's a night light in the client's room. But quality education is going to go ahead and teach your caregivers some of the differences as we age in terms of our senses. So what might be visible to you in low light versus invisible to your client, and making sure that we have caregivers who are professional and understanding of the needs of clients as they age. So because we know there's a lot more to falls prevention than keeping stuff off the floor. So, we want to make sure that we have the best caregivers possible. And we want to make sure that with quality education, a lot of your challenges with your caregivers will really solve themselves. So challenges such as employee turnover and everything else. And so with great caregivers, they're going to start to refer their friends and their family members, and ultimately that's what we want. That's what Greg is doing. That's what some of the most successful agencies are doing, to not only recruit caregivers but also to grow that. So with that said, I want to kind of show the old way versus the new way. So again, as I mentioned, you're developing curriculum on your own, you're scheduling classes, you're scheduling caregivers, you're setting up the room. I am exhausted thinking about the steps that a lot of agencies have to take to train their caregivers. And the new way is, it is much more straightforward, right? It's adding and assigning caregivers classes. Caregivers are taking classes, no fuss, no must. Testing results are automatically saved, and you have certificates automatically generated. So I want to go on and just, talk a little bit about our development cycle. As I mentioned, everything we do at Care Academy starts with recruiting, onboarding, and retention. Here is our development cycle for what every agency worries about, and how we use training to reinforce this, whether it's skills gap identification, because today we're talking about recruiting, career pathing for caregivers. I'm going to show you, by the way, how to do this with our software. Analysis of client needs. Greg talked about that, and I love that because it's reinforcing how you can train caregivers for the needs of the client. And staffing support, because some of you may only have one or two set of hands on deck. And so training is about saving time so you can do the things that matter most, which is recruiting. All right, so all right, so with that being said, I want to go ahead and do a demonstration of one of our classes. We just talked about the senses, and I want to talk with you about one of our classes, which is called Working with an Aging Population. So this is one of our Care Academy classes, and the purpose of this course is to familiarize caregivers with the aging process so that caregivers know what to expect on the job. So caregivers will learn about the challenges that come with age and how to help. So let's go ahead and play a little bit of the video excerpt here. And this video is about taste, so I want to show this to you.
We have about 10,000 taste buds, located mostly on the tongue, that help us detect sweet, salty, sour, and bitter tastes. Our ability to taste changes with age because we lose taste buds. When a client complains that their food tastes off, it may not be the food, it may be their taste buds.
Everything okay?
That tastes strange.
Oh, I'm sorry. But you have to eat. Can I fix it? Maybe a dash of cinnamon or a touch of maple syrup? Would that help?
Well, we can try.
Well, it can't hurt. I'll be right back.
Medications can cause dry mouth, which can affect taste, or the chemicals in the medications can alter flavor.
Excellent. So that was just a taste, pun intended, of one of our videos within the Care Academy class on working with an aging population. And then what we do is we have just activities to reinforce the learning. So we make sure that caregivers are engaged. It's not your traditional slide and audio, right? We want to make sure that caregivers are staying with us. So we have this activity that's a hotspot activity, and we show what senses are changing. So this is a very easy way for caregivers to reinforce their learning. And then in the next activity, there's, this is one of my favorite activities. I think this is really cool. So caregivers can go through, and again, walk through, what specific things are happening as an older adult ages with vision, with hearing, with touch. So I think this is really great. And of course, we have a knowledge check. Now, this knowledge check, we know that they're caregivers who might have, it's been a while since they've been in the classroom. So we want to get them comfortable and acclimated with the idea of sort of testing. So before they get to the actual test, they have these little knowledge checks, 3 questions, very it's not high risk at all, just ways in which to reinforce the learning and make sure that they're on the right page. So this demonstrates a complete lesson, and the video clip just shows how information is just presented by a narrator, followed up by a really clear example. What I love most about our classes, and I'm proud of, is we hired all of those actors there to really show the interaction that your caregivers will have with clients. And I think that's a huge key. Greg mentioned it in terms of those soft skills. That's what we focus on. It's not just the hard skills, but it's also the soft skills. So now let's go ahead and transition onto the dashboard. I want to save you time. I think what's absolutely important here is that you save time so that you can go spend a lot of time thinking about your recruitment strategies. And the way we do that at Care Academy, and we also reinforce recruiting strategies with our training, is via our dashboard. So if you're an administrator at Care Academy, let's say that you are now recruiting caregivers who may be inexperienced, maybe some veteran caregivers. And in terms of using Care Academy as a way to do some recruiting in your community is the very first fact. Care Academy is mobile compliant. And so you can access, or a caregiver can access their training anywhere, anytime, 24/7. They're not coming back into your office to do that. What's best of all in terms of accessing this training, because I'm sure if you've ever used online training, the first question you get is, how do I log in? How do I log in? We know caregivers don't have access to email. So if you're going out into the field to do recruitment and you're asking people for emails, this might be an email they may never check. So our priority is making sure that caregivers can log in with something they're using all their time, their phones. So you can actually log in via your phone number into our dashboard. I think that's really amazing. It's a huge function that a lot of our customers, including Greg, really appreciates. Now, let me show you the add class feature. So you can add classes. So let's say that you've brought in maybe 10 caregivers and you want to get them, you've recruited them, you want to get them through the funnel fast, and you want them to take onboarding training or a first set of classes to show that they are they're going to be committed caregivers. So you may assign a couple classes. So if I'm looking at Yvonne, so Yvonne is a new caregiver, and I want to make sure that he has the classes that he needs. I'm going to look at that initial training, and I already have classes pre-assigned for any of my new hires. That's absolutely key. Let's say Yvonne is going to go out and work for a client that might have some new or different requirements from chronic health issues or dementia. I can, on top of the classes I've pre-assigned, and I'll show you how to do some of that pre-assignment, you also have the option to add more classes for Yvonne. So let me go ahead and do that right now. Let's say that we're going to make classes due for him on September 1st. And I'm going to select classes. And I'm going to go ahead and select non-drug pain management. That's a huge class. We're starting to see a lot of caregivers have to sort of interact with pain management and how to do that without providing medication. So that's a great class potentially to have for a veteran caregiver who may be just starting with your agency and need some client-specific training so they can get out to the field faster. So I'm going to select this, and then I'm going to save that class. And so now Yvonne has that as part of his curriculum, and so when he opens up his application and it opens up the the class or his set of classes, pain management is there waiting for him to take before he walks into a client's home. And so I talked a little bit about curriculum management. So within curriculum management, I want to tell you first and foremost, the way we're saving agencies time in terms of recruiting and onboarding is that we already know what your state mandates are. We include those as part of the curriculum. As soon as you launch your dashboard, that's already there for you. You don't have to figure that stuff out. And we know in the past, maybe with training, you had to do that. We stay up to date and current on all of the training management. And so with initial training, let's say we just recruited 10 caregivers. In the state of California, all the classes that I'm showing you here have to be taken. Your emergency procedures, your maintaining a clean and healthy environment, your safety precautions. That's all locked in on your dashboard. We do that from the very start when you tell us you are a California agency with non-medical private duty caregivers. So that's already set for you. In terms of the topics, so your training manager or your hiring manager can see what are the topics that are covered within the class. And then let me show you this add classes feature. This is really cool. So in your class catalog, you also have all of the tags and the competencies identified, and you can add that. And once you add that, that's completely part of your training curriculum. So now you've set up, this is amazing. And this is actually, eludes the work that Greg and his team are doing to recruit caregivers. Now you're setting yourself apart as an agency, adding classes that refer to recruiting and saying that you're willing as an employer to invest in your caregivers through these initial set of classes to get them going, get them started. So, we walked through that, and I want to show you also, and this is, I think a lot of agencies really love this piece. So it's really the two things and the things that I think folks are worried about is that their caregivers won't get the support, or they have to spend hours doing all of the compliance mandates and reporting. I want to show you just 3 features really quickly. So if you, again, I mentioned this earlier, text messaging and phone use is high among caregivers. That's all caregivers across the board. 70% of our caregivers are using their mobile phones to access training. So what you can do is message caregivers either en masse with everyone or individual caregivers to complete training. So if you have any messages you want to send your caregivers, you can do that directly through our dashboard. It's easy to do, especially with caregivers you're recruiting. You want to stay top of mind, right? There, a lot of agencies are going to be vying for their attention. This is the way you can do that via our text messaging feature. And of course, your reporting log. If you're getting caregivers, you want to get them out as fast as possible to your clients. You can use our compliance report, and our compliance report provides, let me go back. Our compliance report prints not only completion certificates, so let's say I want to print reports for Morgan. Compliance reports, since account creation, print report. All right, let's see. Completion report. Let's say, actually, let's do a custom date range. Since account creation, print report. There we go. All right. So this is done in real time. For those of you in states that have reporting standards, this is done in real time to make sure you can print this. In California, since this is the dashboard that we're looking at, this is actually provided according to the California Home Services Bureau. So some of you California agencies that are spending the last minute before an auditor comes in to kind of put together your reports, this is how we're doing that for you and on your behalf. And then of course you can print certificates and your completion certificates. So I'm going to say, since account creation, print all of that. So these are all of your certificates right here. Okay. And then we are a high touch and high tech platform. We know that your caregivers will have questions, and they'll have questions, at 7 p.m. at night, right? When you've long gone home, we don't want them calling you. We want to make sure that they're getting the support that they need. That's something Greg mentioned on our conversation today. So caregivers can get help either through text message. They can get it through our Zendesk platform and read any of these articles, and they can also call our number and get a live agent that can help them as well. So there's support for both your administrators as well as your caregivers. So I'm going to just go ahead and go back to our slides here. And for those of you on the phone, I have an offer actually. We have two special offers for some of the folks on the phone, but I just want to even reiterate for recruiting today. Here's how we help with recruiting in terms of training. We provide a pre-qualification assessment. You can use our curriculum to do that. So that assessment is not just a test, right? You're setting yourself apart because you're actually willing to provide classes and then a test. And so in terms of our classes, after the caregiver takes the class, they have to pass with an 80% or above. That is the way you can use our training as a pre-qualification assessment with even just a couple seats. If some of you are recruiting, 1 to 2 caregivers a month, utilizing some of those seats in our classes to do pre-qualification is a really great way to jumpstart, those caregivers working with your agency. We do career pathing. I love that Greg mentioned this because I think this is absolutely critical. Caregiving is not a dead-end job. Caregivers will stay with you if they realize that they see a future with your agency. So what we've promoted is upskilling, and the idea of the upskilling is just supporting caregivers to get through a career ladder, either within your agency or outside of your agency, and how you're willing to support them. In terms of our laddering, we look at home health aides, certified nursing assistants, becoming an LPN, possibly becoming an RN. There are lots of jobs that are out there. We have even home care agencies who are coming to us, talking to us about telemedicine and just sort of all these different types of community health workers, these different types of structures of work that relate to home care. And those are opportunities that are going to be open to your home care agency's revenue stream. So that might be really interesting for some of you. And of course, an analysis of client needs. I mentioned it over and over again. I wasn't prepared as a caregiver, so providing diabetes, dementia care, and cancer care, as well as nutrition. Those are some of the classes we recommend for seasoned caregivers. And of course, staffing support for your new caregivers. So your nurses are busy. We want to get you out recruiting. So this is the way you can use our classes, right? So as I mentioned, we have two special offers today. You've seen the dashboard, you've seen how it works to save time. Some of the things you're probably doing already are things that our dashboard automatically does. Our classes are engaging. As I mentioned before, we have a 92% completion rate among caregivers who are starting out with our classes assigned. So our first special offer is number one is our discount pricing. If you are ready, and we're going to open this up, it's going to expire today at midnight. We are offering a $50 off all of our packages. So you're going to go onto our website, and we're going to put that in the chat box. So I'm going to ask our team to put that link in the chat box. So we're offering $50 off of all packages. So if you are starting off with only 10 seats, you may have a smaller or starter agency. Instead of $149 a month, you're paying $99 a month. So if you are, typically we would say $249 a month for 25 seats, it's $199 a month. If our most popular plan, $349, so it's now $299 a month for 50 seats. So that allows for you to train your current caregivers and maybe the caregivers that you're recruiting. On the business end, if you're a larger agency, we're offering 100 seats today by midnight at $449. And if you're larger than that, we're really open to speaking with you and making it possible and feasible for you to get started today. So what I want to mention too is we have a money back guarantee. I believe in our product. I believe in our team to execute on behalf of agencies. We will be there with a customer support team, and we are here, and foremost, it's baked into our values to make sure that home care agencies thrive. So for that reason, we offer a money back guarantee with today's special offer. And that offer, the offer that you're seeing here, expires today at midnight. So let me just show how you get to that on our website. So the way you get to that is, so you'd go to, and we've already sent the link here, it's www.careacademy.com/pricing. So here you'd go ahead and sign up, and you're going to put in the code. Yep. So you're going to put in the discount code, discount 50, right? So the discount code is discount 50. You can sign up directly with our page and save $50 every month. It's not just the first month, it's every month of your plan. Right? So that's the first offer. So if you're ready to go now, you know you need online training. I think that's a great offer for those of you. So go back. So let's go back to pricing and so the website for those who are ready to get started. Okay, so that website again is careacademy.com/pricing, discount 50, and we'll send this out via email right after this call. So so you sign up by midnight. Some of you will be saving up to $600 per year, and it's a great way to get great service as well as our classes. Our next offer. So say you have never heard of online training, you haven't. It's not something that you've done before. So we have another offer for today, and I want you to try Care Academy. Again, I believe in the product. I believe also in the service. We have great agency owners that hold us to a very high expectation, like Greg Sanchez. So try Care Academy free for 30 days. Go crazy, right? Add 10, add 20, add 30 caregivers. If you use the coupon code TRIAL at careacademy.com/trial. It's all you have to do. Just use that coupon code, sign up for any of those tiers and use trial. We'll get you started ASAP. The wonderful thing is when you sign up with our service, we automatically issue you that dashboard. So as soon as you put that in, you're going to get started with the dashboard. You're going to be sent your access code. You can put your administrators on, put as many caregivers on. What we're going to do at the end of that trial is, you can tell us, yes, I want to keep using Care Academy. We are going to go ahead then and charge your card. So within that first 30 days is go ahead, put your caregivers on, use it as a recruitment strategy. Tell everyone that you're talking to that your agency invests in its caregivers, and use that 30 days in order to try out our software to see if it'll work for you, right? You don't have anything to lose. Even if you do become a customer, you also have that 30-day guarantee as well. So, we wanted to provide two different avenues for someone to try and really excel with Care Academy and use it as part of your recruitment strategies. For our next two webinars on onboarding and retention, we'll talk about how Care Academy works for onboarding as well as retention. So you want to make sure you come back for those, especially if you're a customer or you're thinking about becoming a customer today. So I want to thank everyone for joining us on the webinar. Again, the codes that you saw earlier, if you want to become a customer today and save $50 on your overall plan, it's discount 50. And then if you want to try Care Academy risk-free for the next 30 days with as many caregivers as you want, go ahead and put them all on there. It's just the code TRIAL. Okay, so I want to thank everyone so much for being on our webinar today. I hope we provided you with some really great strategies. We will put some of the answers and responses in the email that we send out, and we will also we will also make sure that any of the questions that you ask and the responses, we make sure that we also put in the email. Let me stop right there and see if we have any questions. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take those right now, whether it's about the webinar that we just did or about the offer. Is there any tech support to assist with setup? Yes. We do have tech support to assist with setup. As I mentioned, as soon as you sign up, you get a dashboard, and we're able to provide you with a webinar as well as, you know, a pretty dedicated customer support team that can help you with setup. So that means you're talking with a real live person. No other service really provides that to agencies. So yes, we will help you with setup. And yes, you can enter training for for staff. We do have staff level training. We have more so on the caregiver side, but either way, you can add that for either your staff members or your caregivers. And in terms of rollout is pretty simple. As soon as you sign up on the website, whether it's for the trial or $50 off of your training, we go ahead and get you started. You get your dashboard automatically, you sign on, you can add caregivers, and if you need any help, we will be right there. We'll actually have our customer success team call you to make sure that you feel comfortable using the dashboard. So we take those proactive means. So Judith asked, can we adjust the level of plan from month to month? So what we do is we have a set minimum. So if you want to start off, Judith, let's say, you know, you're comfortable starting off with 10 caregivers now, that's what you're going to do. You know, we recommend doing that because we have a minimum. So start off with that minimum, and if your needs grow and you feel more comfortable with that, we can move you up, right? But we have a set minimum. We find that a lot of agencies who are trying things out and they want to sign up right away to take advantage of that $50 off, we'll start off with a $99 a month plan. It's very simple. You know, it's something that we're providing a whole lot of value for that $99, and maybe that's a place to start. So Anna asked, can you receive the $50 off after the trial? No, so we are not providing the $50 off after the trial. We want you to, you know, definitely use the trial, use it and see if Care Academy is right for you. You know, but we're not providing the $50 off after the trial. That is a you know, sort of an occurrence right now, and signing up by midnight. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. It's 1-866-227-CARE. 1-866-227-3895. So if you have any questions after the webinar, we're happy to answer those too about our services and what that looks like. So Daphne is asking how Care Academy works in conjunction with in-house, in-person training. That's a wonderful question, Daphne. So we didn't cover this actually in the webinar, but we have something called a wave feature. So Greg actually mentioned that that he uses our classes in conjunction with in-person training. I'm actually going to do an ad hoc demonstration right now. So if you go to Morgan's you know, training, so we can look down and there's something called a wave feature. So this wave feature actually has you inputting either our classes because you use our class to teach in person, or you could use your agency class and fill in that name. And so as soon as you write that in, that actually is going to give approvals for that in-person class. That is, you know, a very simple way to make sure that any of your classes you're teaching in person can be used in the platform. That comes complimentary and is part of our training commitment to you. Greg uses this feature right now. And you know, it's invaluable, and we actually recommend that you're using this alongside in-person training. So that's a great question, Daphne. Hazel asked, do we have different packages or recommendations for each state? Great question. So, you know, Hazel, the different packages are only by seats. No matter what state you're from, We currently service within 47 states, and more than likely you're in one of those 47 states, right? Because of the sheer number. When you sign on to the dashboard, we make sure the classes for your state for compliance are automatically loaded. The classes that I was showing you are in California, so these classes were already loaded for these caregivers. So this curriculum building feature this is what automatically populates for your initial training as well as your annual required training. We provide it all, so you don't have to think about that. If there are any changes or adjustments, we also make that too. So that's automatically populated. That comes part of the package. That's not different. So all you have to worry about and all you have to think about is the number of seats that you're going to have. So sign up, we'll get you started on your state requirements and so much more. Kingsley is asking if there is a contract. So when we entered into this industry, we learned that a lot of the online providers would do anything from a 3 to a 5-year contract, right? We thought that was very onerous. And we, as I mentioned, I believe in our product. I believe in our team to deliver. We only do a 1-year contract. Again, we also back our classes and our platform up with a 30-day guarantee. If you don't want our training and it doesn't work for you, I will personally say thank you for trying our classes and then also make sure that you're out of that contract. I don't want to lock you in, Kingsley, to something that you don't want for you or for your caregivers or is not a good fit. We always want to make sure that we have one of the highest NPS scores among a caregiver training platform or among any sort of training platform. So I want to make sure that we stick to that and we're doing our due diligence by you, by your caregivers. So if for any reason you're not satisfied within that first 30 days, I don't want to keep you, beholden to us, through a contract. So we have a 1-year contract with a 30-day out. And Kingsley, we'd love for you to try the trial and see how we can work for you. Okay. Any other questions? Awesome. So this is not the only opportunity you have to ask us questions. If you have any other questions, feel free to email us. Feel free to email us at hello@careacademy.com. And so hello@careacademy.com. And let me go back to that main screen. So here's our contact information right here. So go ahead and you can also connect with us via Facebook, and we are on Twitter at Care Academy Co. Also feel free to call us at 1-866-227-3895. Again, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. We have our next 2 webinars. That's going to be on onboarding and on retention. Onboarding and retention, we're going to have some really great folks. September 6th is going to be the onboarding webinar, and then September 20th is going to be the recruitment webinar at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. With that said, thank you so much, and we look forward to having you on the next webinars and seeing some of you folks start with Care Academy on our trials. Thank you so much.